Hello, and welcome to today's Strength Training 101 class with Back Bay Health. My name is Laura Latham. I'm a sports chiropractor, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about strength training, why it's important, and a special focus on today's topic, which is pushing movements. These are generally upper body movements, pushing things away from you horizontally or vertically. Okay, so why are we here today? We're here because strength training is super important. Strength training is not only important because it builds muscle and it builds bone and it helps to prevent osteoarthritis and overall health. It also has associations for improved sleep, decreased fatigue. It can be helpful with mood disorders like depression and anxiety, but it also helps you to do better at taking on the demands of everyday life. It can be helpful in pregnancy. It can be helpful in adolescence. It can be helpful with older adults. It can be helpful to improve metabolism and energy. Honestly, the most important thing to know about this is it not only helps you move, but it helps you move well. And it also improves your durability and longevity, which are two things we all care about because none of us are getting any younger, right? So today's class is geared towards, again, those of us who aren't getting any younger. So yes, the 55 up population, but really this is for anybody who is new to strength training or just wants to learn more, understand the why behind the what when it comes to what we do with strength training. So let's start there. What constitutes strength training as opposed to really any other exercise? And the magic is in the strength bit. Strength training requires resistance, whether that's gravity, body weight movements, bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, anything that you can push against to challenge your force output. That's the metric we are looking to challenge. Now, it's not just any old resistance, right? It has to be an appropriately challenging resistance for you. And the wonderful thing about this is that your musculoskeletal system is adaptable. So if you have used weights before, you've known that as you use them and you use them regularly, they get a little bit easier. So it's important to increase the challenge so that you can maintain the difficulty of the challenge. That's truly what makes strength training. So for example, if I tell you a little bit about my background, I have 3 kids that I pick up on a regular basis, especially my almost 3-year-old who weighs about 30 pounds. I carry groceries. I do strength train and exercise, which that's good too. But just to give you an idea about the average weight of the things that I lift on a daily basis. So on that note, general weights for me that would be appropriate would be starting with at least 20 pounds because my toddler is almost 30 pounds. If you are somebody who maybe doesn't have kids, who likes to travel, I bet your carry-on is close to 50 pounds. Your gallon of milk is 9 pounds. This should kind of give you an idea of how much things weigh in your life. And when we strength train, we can pick weights that prepare us for the things that we do in life. This is a way to make us more resilient and more durable and also more prepared for our day-to-day activities. And then from there, okay, I have an idea of the weights that I generally lift. So, which can also empower you to choose heavier weights when it comes to the exercises you do, as opposed to maybe, I find that most people feel comfortable starting with something lighter, like a 5 pound or even less, a 2 or 3 pound, which is totally fine, but it's not strength training. And you're not going to get the benefits or the outcomes that you are hoping for. That said, exercise and movement in general is a really wonderful thing. However, if you're looking to improve muscle mass, improve function, improve endurance, improve strength and control and balance, we need a challenge. So what constitutes a challenge? Generally speaking, it's lower reps. So we're thinking 10 reps or less, but for our all intents and purposes for our class today, we're going to be doing sets of 10. And the rule is we want it to be tough at 10. So by the time we get to that 10th rep, we should feel pretty challenged, right? It shouldn't necessarily feel comfortable. There's a certain amount of work and effort and maybe even a little bit of fatigue when it comes to using a challenging weight. And there are a whole lot of ways that we can define this and make it specific to the person who's lifting the weight. And one of the ways is called RPE, which stands for reps. Hold on, I'm confusing my titles again. This stands for rate of perceived exertion. So like how hard this feels like you're working. And another way is called RIR, which stands for reps. There it is, reps in reserve. The one we're going to be using for today is RIR. When you get to that 10th rep, how many reps do you think you could continue to do if I didn't stop you at 10? Right? So in other words, if you're thinking of your like proverbial gas tank, right? As you're doing those 10 reps, you're draining the gas tank a little bit. And if I tell you to stop, how many do you think you could do before you would really fatigue? Maybe you couldn't feel like you could do the exercise properly, or you might drop the weight or whatever that might look like. So if I'm using, for example, a lighter weight, like my 10-pound med ball here, and I was going to be pushing this overhead, right? I can very easily, I'll tell you this, do 10 pounds overhead with this med ball. So when I get to the 10th rep, we'll fast forward and imagine I've gotten to the 10th rep. I can tell you I can definitely do 10 more reps with that. However, if I picked a much heavier weight, like say a 50-pound med ball, which would be appropriate for me, I would get to that 10th rep and I would say, okay, I could probably do like 2 more, okay? A good challenge when it comes to RIR, reps in reserve, is that your gas tank, how many reps you feel like you have left in the gas tank by the time you finish the 10th rep, is going to be about 3 to 5 reps, right? So 2 for me would be a little bit too challenging. I might decrease my weight. My first choice, 10 pounds, would not be challenging enough because I had 10 reps left in the gas tank. So that's going to give me an idea about where to land in terms of challenging, in terms of an appropriate challenge. There is not really a limit in terms of like how heavy you could go. You could go till 1 rep left in reserve. You could go till failure. However, the downsides of performing at that level start to creep up. Experience can really limit us. If we go to failure, we're more likely to get injured. Also, it's a hard challenge to recover from. Anybody who knows who's may have exercised before, I'm speaking about all exercise now, right? Not just strength training. If you've gone for a run and it was a little bit longer than maybe you were ready for, you probably felt a little bit sore the next day. Fine, but with the purpose of exercising is not to induce soreness, and that's also not like super fun, right? So I want to be able to challenge myself, get the most out of that challenge so that I can again build muscle, build bone, improve my tolerance for daily activities and sport, and improve my durability over time. And I don't want to do it in a way that is particularly uncomfortable. So we're going to aim, when it comes to any strength training exercise, to get about 10 reps and to pick a weight that's challenging enough so that if I had to continue after the 10th one, I would only be able to do about 3 to 5 more reps. So probably for me, a good choice would be maybe 35 or even 40 pounds of that med ball overhead. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more about push exercises. So why push exercises? These are actually really important when it comes to aging, and one of the things that we think about when it comes to aging is, yes, bone density, but also fall risk, right? Um, there's actually not a significant increase in risk for falls in the older adult population, but it's the challenge that that fall, or the risk, I guess, that that fall puts on us, right? If bone density is a problem, falling can be more, can cause more damage, cause more injuries. The other thing is, as we age, it's really common that we typically don't go all the way down to the floor. We don't get down on the floor. We don't therefore have to push ourselves up from the floor. And one kind of universal rule when it comes to physical activity, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if we're not exposed to getting down to the floor, like on purpose, not because of a fall, and if we don't challenge the pushing movement, then it can pose a really big problem if we were to fall and we can't get up. You can't call for help. You can't check to see if you're okay. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't, what are you going to do if you get down there or if you live alone? So it's a really important challenge to get down to the floor and also to work on this pushing movement. So that's why we're here today. All right, so on that note, we are in fact going to get down to the floor. I'm going to review some different types of pushing movements. We're going to talk about some wrist stuff that typically is something that most people are feeling a little apprehensive about when it comes to pushing movements. Again, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you don't spend a lot of time pushing into your wrists or loading your wrists, they don't feel good. And this is a good time maybe for the conversation around wear and tear. Classically, societally, there's a big myth out there that says, well, if I use it, it's going to wear out. It's going to break down, right? The adage that running is bad for your knees, it wears them out somehow, or that lifting is bad for your back, it wears it out somehow. This is fundamentally false. We've known that this is false for a really long time. In fact, running builds the cartilage in your knees. Lifting heavy weights off of the floor using your back builds a stronger, more robust back. Okay, so what gives? Where does this come from, right? Maybe you've hurt your knee while running. Maybe the adage or the idea that running can break your knees down does make sense to you. So how could this be true if I'm telling you that it's in fact the opposite, right? It's not the exercise that is inherently problematic, it's the dose, which brings us all the way back to our RPE. How hard is the challenge? Can we recover from it? It has to be hard in order for it to build muscle and build bone, but it shouldn't be so hard that it wipes us out. And that has a really big stimulus for creating more inflammation and more demand on our recovery system. And if it overwhelms our system, it can lead to injury. So we've got to do it if we want to be able to do it, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. If you want to move, you got to move. And then from there, we want to pick an appropriate challenge that's hard, but not too hard. Okay. And again, by this same conversation, if we want to be able to use our wrists to push off the floor, we have to find a safe starting point and exercise that loads our wrist to tolerance. Again, it should be challenging, but it shouldn't be particularly painful. All right, and we're going to talk about that as we go. So I'm going to have you all come down to the floor with me. I've got a nice squishy mat down here that's going to make it comfortable, and I would recommend that for anybody who isn't used to going down towards the floor or who maybe has sore, achy wrists. We're going to talk about that too. Whoop. Okay, let me get my tripod working with me, not against me here. What are we doing? Maybe that? Okay, excellent. All right. So we're coming down on the floor. And the first thing we're going to do in terms of an intro to pushing movement is hang out in what we would call a tabletop position if you've ever done yoga. All right, so we're going to hang out on the hands and knees here. Hands and wrists are roughly underneath the shoulders, knees are under the hips, and we're just going to pause. Now, if you have cranky wrists right off the bat, you're going to say, that's not super fun for me. Okay. So one thing that you might want to do to remove or reduce some of the challenge to your wrists. So I'm hearing that that dose of challenge is too much for your wrists. So it's not the position that's bad for you. It's just that we need to decrease the dose of challenge here. So one thing you can do is you can roll up a small towel, put it underneath your wrists. So it reduces the joint angle here. So it's a little bit less severe. You can also move your hands out in front of me so you can see now how my wrists aren't as aggressively extended when they're out in front of my shoulder, if they're more in line with my face, than if I'm here. Okay, so this is kind of step one, is to find a comfortable position. And if this was good for you, then we're good to go. All right, so now from here, we're going to tuck the toes, we're going to lift the knees, and hover in what I call a beast plank. So this would be the variation if your wrists are feeling a little achy. And for anybody else who maybe doesn't feel achy through the wrists, we're going to be here. Okay, our plank, and you can relax down. So that we want to do about a 10-second plank. A plank is a static position in which we are pushing the floor away. So it's our basic intro to plank position. Beast is going to keep our hands and feet a little bit closer together. And when our points of support on the floor a little bit closer together, that decreases intensity of our core challenge. Now, we didn't necessarily use reps, right? Maybe we were counting seconds. So if you feel like you could easily do 10 more seconds with that first 10-second hold in the beast plank, we need a harder exercise. If we were using weights, we would say we need a higher weight. In this case, we're going to go for a harder exercise. So for those of us who that first one was really challenging, stick with that. For everybody else who is ready for something a little bit more challenging, we're going to progress from here. So the next one is going to be a high plank. All right. And from here, we're going to hold for 10 seconds in that high plank. Same position of the hands. They're going directly under shoulders. Feet step back, and we're going to say relatively neutral from the top of our head with a straight line all the way down to our heels, and then we'll set the knees back down. All right. Hope we all did well with that for our 10-second hold and high plank. If that was relatively easy for you, you should feel work here in your chest. You should feel work a little bit in your upper body, potentially even the front of your legs. You shouldn't feel discomfort. That is more than mild discomfort. It would be totally normal to feel mild discomfort in your wrists, especially if you're not used to feeling this, as opposed to pain. So you don't need to be worried about that. And especially if now that we've stopped and we're talking for a second, that discomfort resolves quickly, then you're good to go and you're ready for the next step. So from here, we're going to go ahead and do some elbow taps. This is a little bit more of a dynamic plank, and it starts to challenge our stability and our single arm pushing position. Again, we're not having to move our bodies forward and back or change position in terms of the pushing in this direction, but we're just kind of exposing ourselves to more and more of a challenge here. All right. So here we go. We're going to put our hands under our shoulders again. We're going to let our feet step back into a high plank, and we're going to do 10 elbow taps. All right, and then you can set the knees back down. Great. Another sign that this is a good challenge for you is if you're starting to feel your heartbeat a little bit, maybe you're starting to huff and puff a little bit. And again, now we've applied some reps to the exercise. So if you were relatively easily be able to get to those 10 elbow taps, then you too are ready for something else. All right. Now we're going to explore some actual pushing challenge. Actually, I have one more kind of tip for those of us who maybe have some sore wrists or sore shoulders with these pushing challenges. And if you're still interested in planks and you'd like to find a movement that's maybe a little bit more accessible, and maybe that wasn't accessible, here's an option for you. And that is going to be to do an elevated plank. So when our hands and feet are on the ground and at the same level, the weight distribution is relatively equal between hands in the upper body as well as the lower body. However, when we elevate the hands on a surface, maybe chair height, we're offloading some of the weight from the upper body into the lower body. So it decreases the relative challenge up here. So if the fatigue was in the upper body or in the wrists or the shoulders or the neck, this elevated plank might be a great option for you. So I'm just going to quickly review some of the planks that we just did. Our beast plank, for example, might look like this with the knees bent here. Also, again, the more over top the hands and wrists that you are with your shoulders, the more of a wrist extension range of motion challenge it is. If you step back a smidge, you can see how that angle and pressure on my wrists decreases a little bit. That might be an option for you. Here's what our high plank would look like. Knees straight, nice and long. And then if you wanted to try the elbow taps, you certainly could do it here as well. All right, so now that we're all caught up to speed and have a couple more variations, we're gonna do some floor pressing. So now, for those of you who have any weights, dumbbells, kettlebells, you can go ahead and grab these. Anything from 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds would be an appropriate weight for this. We're going to get down to the floor and we're going to push some weights overhead. This is called a floor press. It's similar to a bench press, except in terms of the type of movement, except we're on the floor. This is a little bit more of a shoulder-friendly version of the bench press. One reason why the bench press is pretty challenging for the shoulder is because when your back is supported by the bench, your shoulder can dip way down here. To be clear, this is an excellent challenge for your shoulder if your shoulder can handle it. Excuse me. However, if your shoulder cannot handle it for any reason, if you have pain or discomfort, then that range of motion would be the first thing that I would try to eliminate. I wouldn't stop using my shoulders because, again, if you don't use it, you lose it. However, we're going to look for a modification and range of motion, decreasing intensity, lower weight, or changing the tool you use. These are all great options. So to get into the floor press and the bench press, to be honest, one of the bigger challenges of these movements is just getting into the position. So I'm going to show you how to get into a floor press position with the weight that is going to keep your shoulders, elbows, and trunk, low back, all that goodness, feeling pretty happy. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your weight, whether it's a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a medicine ball. You're going to put it on the floor to the side of you. You're going to lay down next to it. You're going to bring your shoulders over, your hips over, your knees over, and you're going to face the weight that you're going to use. You're going to grab the weight with both hands, again, whether it's a dumbbell, kettlebell, med ball, whatever you're going to use. And you're going to pull that weight close into your chest and then roll to your back. You're going to, with two hands, press the weight up into position. And then from there, you can move it around to get it into a good spot for our shoulder press. So for today, I'm going to show you a single arm shoulder press. However, we can use 2 dumbbells. We can do 2 at once. We can do alternating. There's so many options here. I like the single arm press because it gives us a little bit more of a core challenge in our shoulders and our core, and really work together when it comes to that pushing motion. So this is just one place to start. As an individual, it wouldn't be a terrible decision to start with the 2-arm, to start with bands, to start with another position, or stick to the planks for a little bit if you're new to this. Again, it's the exercise you choose doesn't matter. The dose matters. So if you get a really good challenge from the planks that we did, that's a great way to work your pushing ability. And if that's not that good of a challenge for you and you're ready for something more, this is an excellent next step. Okay, so from here, our feet are flat. We're laying on the floor, keeping our head in a relaxed position. I'm going to, let's see, for the video, I guess I'll do my left arm first. So I'm going to put my left arm on the handle and my right arm is going to use go over top just for support to get the weight where it needs to go. And from here, I'm going to bring the weight over to my left side. I'm going to keep my hand up here just for safety. And I'm going to bring this elbow at about a 45-degree angle down to the ground and reach up to punch the ceiling and tap it down to punch the ceiling. All right, and off we go. So I'm going to try to get to my 10 reps here. I'm using a 20-pound dumbbell. This is going to start to get a little tiring for me, but I'll be honest with you, I could easily do 5 more by the time I get to 10. I think probably 30 pounds would have been a better choice for me if I really wanted to get a good challenge with this one. Excellent. All right, now to finish, how do we get out of this, right? We're going to come all the way up to the top. I'm going to bring my free hand to grab the weight. We're going to pull it down to our chest, roll to the side to place the weight down. From here, you can sit up. So we'll move this bad boy over to the other side and go from there. Now let's go over a couple more pushing movements. Again, we've already discussed how to progress that one, how to and how to regress it, right? We could change range of motion. We could decrease weight. We could change reps. Those are all really great options. But what if I wanted to try something challenging or just something different? One movement we haven't done yet between the planks and the single arm press, we've been pushing horizontally away from ourselves. But what if I have a big trip to Europe coming and I need to be able to get that suitcase in the overhead bin? I better be working on my overhead press. All right, so I'm going to show you guys a single arm overhead press. And let me just fix my camera here. Let's see if we can get all of me in this one. Okay. So I'm going to stick with my 20-pound dumbbell here. Again, I like a single arm movement because it really challenges my core and some of those stabilizing muscles. And the reality is, if I'm doing this because I want to lift a suitcase or a small human, they're probably not predictable. They probably don't follow a simple range of motion. I need to be able to challenge myself dynamically, and that's why I like to do this. However, again, it's really just about exposing yourself to a challenge. And if there's a movement that's a little more simple for you, for whatever reason, that's an excellent choice as well. And let me just move this up a little bit because I want you to be able to see my upper body. All right. So for an overhead press, I'm going to reach down and grab my dumbbell and I'm going to bring it right in front of my shoulder. Now, generally speaking, we're going to be gripping this right in the middle of the handlebar. We're going to place that dumbbell or kettlebell right in front of the shoulder. You can see my arm is vertical. My elbow is pretty close, hugged into my body here. I'm imagining that I'm keeping this elbow in my front pocket. And then from here, I'm just taking these knuckles and I'm reaching straight up towards the ceiling and lowering it back down. All right, so we've got single arm overhead press. Now, a couple of my favorite options here in terms of overhead press is a push press or a jerk. These are exercises where we can use our lower body to help get the weight up there in case I'm having a lot of shoulder fatigue. Maybe I picked a weight that was too heavy. So I want to show you these. I also like these exercises because they're a way to kind of get the lower body involved with working the upper body. It's really more of a coordination challenge than it is a strength challenge. Just the simple single arm overhead press is a really great strength challenge, but I'll show you these two as an option as well. So a push press is you're going to start in the same position as the single arm press. You're going to get a little tiny bend in the knees, a little mini quarter squat. And then as you stand up and out of that quarter squat, you're going to use the effort to push the weight up overhead. And then just the arm works to lower back down. Okay, so let me do this at full speed for you. Quarter squat, stand up, and then lower down. Quarter squat, stand up, and then lower down. Here's a side view. Quarter squat, stand up, and lower down. And just notice that the dumbbell moves pretty linearly. It doesn't come way out to the side. It doesn't drop in towards the middle. It goes straight up and straight down. And same thing from the side. It doesn't fly way out in front of me or get lost behind me. It stays right in front of my shoulder here. All right, and then a jerk is a pretty similar movement. You are going to squat down and then push up and catch the weight underneath. So you catch the weight in a little bit of a squat position. Again, another really great fun challenge to do for the upper body, and it's a little bit like real life. All right, everybody. I got cut off a little bit at the end there, but I just wanted to come back and wrap it up to say thank you for watching this video. Please go ahead and share to anybody who you think might find this information useful. Today we reviewed why strength training is important. It helps us move better. It helps us move well. It helps us move better and well longer. Also, it is important for building lean muscle mass. But what makes strength training? It's got to be challenging. How do we know it's challenging? If our reps in reserve, by the time we get to the 10th rep, it's a tough at 10 exercise. At the end of that set, we can only do about 3 or 4 more. If you can do more, 3 to 5 more. If you can do more than 5, then it's probably time to increase your weight or pick a more challenging version of that exercise. If you can't do 3 more by the time you get to that 10th rep, then maybe you could choose a lighter exercise or even decrease reps a little bit. In terms of exercises, we went over some front planks today, beast plank with some modified hand positions for the wrist. We went over high plank, we went over elbow taps, and we also did that in the elevated position, which can help decrease the challenge a little bit for those of us that have, for some reason, an issue limiting us with our shoulder and wrist. Again, it's really important that if you do have an issue that's limiting you to use these body parts, don't avoid the movement. If it's painful, talk to a professional and find some movements that you can do, find that same starting point. But keep looking for options that are doable so that you can keep moving, because fundamentally the musculoskeletal system is adaptable. And if you challenge it, it will get stronger. And if you continue to challenge it, you very likely will be able to do things that you couldn't do before in ways you couldn't do before. All right, thanks for coming to today's Strength Training 101. Have a great day.